everybody with us on this Monday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Back with you after a few days off in the Mexican sun. Had to get a little R&R. And the news cycle hasn't changed a bit. I haven't missed anything from the debate on Wednesday night. That's all everybody's talking about. You've heard of the Great White Hope? Well, Dr. Ben Carson is the Republican Party's Great Black Hope. I mean, let's cut to the chase. The last thing the Republican Party needs right now is for a minority candidate to go sideways with his credibility. And I think this is what unfolded the other night in the Republican debate on CNBC. And so what are the Republicans doing? They're turning the focus and they're creating the target. Well, CNBC, they were just totally out of bounds. The questions were unprofessional. That's not right. We got to write the head up at NBC and let them know we're not going to be dealing with them anymore. Time out. The issue is about credibility. The issue is about judgment. The issue is about integrity. And this debate deserves some credit for going into the background and the business background and the professional judgment of a man who now leads in the polls nationally and also in Iowa, the first caucus state, and that's Dr. Ben Carson. Now, if we're afraid of the truth, let's be afraid of the truth. Even the conservative media right now is starting to work over the front runner because he was lying in the debate the other night. Here is the question that everybody's reeling about with Dr. Ben Carson. His involvement with a company, Manotech. Here it is.
This is a company called Manotech, a maker of nutritional supplements with which you had a 10-year relationship. They offered claims that they could cure autism, cancer. They paid $7 million to settle a deceptive marketing lawsuit in Texas, and yet your involvement continued. Why?
Well, that's easy to answer. I didn't have an involvement with them. That is total propaganda. And this is what happens in our society, total propaganda.
Okay, so it's total, he calls it total propaganda. This is what happens in our society. He totally said he had no involvement with this company. He went on to say that he did do speeches. He did get paid for the speeches. But wait a minute. There's an infomercial out there where he clearly endorses the Manotech products.
And that's why I was drawn toward Manotech, because it recognized, the influence on health of natural foods.
Glyconutrients. That's what it's all about. Now, what you just heard in that infomercial, is that an endorsement? You better believe it is. It's a professional association. He's lending his professional credibility as a doctor to a company, and he's getting paid for it. And then he goes into a debate and blames it on our society, blames it on gotcha journalism. So he's asked the question, what do you want the debates to be like? This is what he said on Sunday.
Well, we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of a debate? And the real purpose is to allow the voters to have an opportunity to see what's behind each of the candidates. What do they actually think about the various policies that are affecting the lives of everyday Americans?
Okay, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And what is behind Ben Carson when it comes to his professional integrity to lend his name and his experience and his title and his education, his entire background to a company that now he's willing to step out in front of the American people to say, well, I just didn't have any association with a company that was sued for $7 million for false advertising, yet he endorsed them. Now, CNBC is now attacking, or should I say, the RNC is now attacking CNBC, saying that, well, the questions were off base. That question is exactly what I want to see in a debate. This is a vetting process that we have to have. And I think there's a racial component here. The last thing the Republican Party needs is for a minority candidate, with all the problems they've had with minorities and how they can't get minorities to support their agenda. The last thing they need is for a minority front-running candidate to go sideways and lie about his professional past. And that's exactly what Ben Carson is doing. He also had this to say about the debates.
Well, I think that we should have moderators who are interested in disseminating the information about the candidates as opposed to...
Well, what is that? Okay, he's asked you a question about your involvement with a company. That's disseminating information about your past and who you are, Dr. Carson. This is a freak show is what it is. Ben Carson has been off the rails since day one. And now that he's been caught in a debate lying, now that he's trying to go sideways on his professional past with a company that is less than reputable, here we are. It's CNBC's fault. Here we are. We got to have debates with people that are going to go ahead and be on our side. In fact, Ted Cruz went so far as to say this about the moderators.
Lay out a radical proposition. How about if we say from now on, if you have never voted in a Republican primary in your life, you don't get to moderate a Republican primary debate.
In other words, if you're going to make our candidates look dishonest because they are, we don't want anything to do with you. That's where the Republican Party is. And the last thing they need is a credibility problem with their front-running candidate, and that's exactly what they've got. So they've got to get a target. The target is CNBC. Look, aren't you and I smart enough to determine whether the question's worth a shit or not? I mean, come on. I mean, it's the answers. This was a pivotal point in all of the debates that we've seen so far of the Republicans. And I'd like to have some questions about Donald Trump and his business past. When you're on that stage and you want to be the commander in chief and you want to lead this country, you've got to expect that everything in your past is going to be in a path of no stone left unturned. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. When we come back, Jeb Bush, I thought, did the right thing by going after Marco Rubio. I mean, after all, the people in Florida elected Rubio to go represent them in the United States Senate, and he's trying to justify missing votes. Stay with us. We're right back. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, to the iSave team bring you Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you back with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Let's investigate what Jeb Bush is trying to do. There's a lot of criticism about Bush's campaign. The rats are leaving the ship. He's not organized. He's not aggressive enough. Everything he's tried to do has not worked, and he just can't get the momentum. And there's a tremendous amount of disappointment within his campaign that they're not doing very well. They're not doing well against Carson. They're not doing well against Trump. And so Rubio seems to be the target. He went after Rubio in the debate the other night, says that he should quit the Senate because he's missing votes. This has become a real legitimate story, I think, and I think Bush did the right thing. Now, whether he had a bad debate or not can be debated. But the fact is he tried to rehabilitate himself on Meet the Press yesterday and continued his attack on Rubio.
The basic point with Marco isn't that he's not a good person or he's not a gifted politician. Everybody can see that. It's that I have proven leadership skills. I got to be governor of a state and accomplish big things. And in this era of gridlock, it's really hard to break through, and I think he's given up. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. This is about public service, about solving problems. If you look at the three people on the stage for the United States Senate, all three of them have a combined 2 bills that became law that they've sponsored. If you look at Hillary Clinton in 10 years, 3 bills she's sponsored that became law. This is the gridlock that I'm running to try to break up. I can change the culture in Washington.
So it takes 3 Republican senators to do the work that Hillary Clinton did 10 years ago in the Senate. I found that rather comical. All right, but here's the point. He thinks that he can change Washington. You can't change Washington unless you're going to vote. And Rubio, of course, is not voting. What did the people of Florida think about this? Annette Taddeo joins us. She's running for Congress in Florida's 26th district. She has a long history of politics in the state of Florida. Great friend of ours. Annette, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
How is this story playing out? Is this a problem for Rubio that he goes on national television and says that, you know, his votes really aren't that important and really minimizes the importance of the Senate? That's how I take it. How's it playing in Florida?
Well, the latest poll in Florida has him, has still, I mean, we still have Donald Trump as number one, and then Carson, and then Rubio. So he's the sitting senator, and yet somehow he's not polling anywhere in the top 2. So not playing so well. The Sun Sentinel continued its request for him to resign. And I think, you know, the internal fight has been interesting to watch, certainly from the ground, and all the different operatives. Today, Rubio's former chief of staff, when he was Speaker of the House in Florida, just announced that he's endorsing Jeb. So the fight continues.
Okay. Does Jeb have to do this? Does he have to go on the offensive against Rubio and attack his voting record and put him on the defensive?
I don't know that he has to. I don't think it's helping Jeb. I think, it was very clear that Rubio was prepared to respond to that attack, maybe not expecting it right from Jeb, from his friend, his mentor, but certainly Rubio was prepared. Jeb was not prepared. I mean, if you're going to attack somebody, certainly in a debate, you better be prepared to totally kill them, and that was not what Jeb was prepared to do.
This is Rubio on Face the Nation yesterday defending himself not voting in the Senate. This is what he had to say. This is his excuse.
The truth is, I don't like missing votes, but what I would really hate is to wake up on the first Wednesday of November to the news that Hillary Clinton's been elected President of the United States. So we're going to continue to serve the people of Florida. We do, I think, a very good job in our offices of serving our constituents in their interaction with government. We will most certainly be there for most votes and many votes. There will be some I will miss, and I will miss them because I'm campaigning so that in the future, those votes actually mean something.
I mean, that is just outrageous for him to say, I don't like missing votes, but what I really hate is to wake up the first Wednesday of November to the news that Hillary Clinton will be elected president. So what kind of excuse is that? How is that going to play with the folks in Florida?
Well, in the local shows in Florida, what they were comparing that answer to is, and both on Spanish as well, was the fact that the other senators running have missed 10 votes. So whether it's Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side or the other senators on the Republican side, somehow they're able to do it and only miss 10 votes and not miss important votes. He certainly is not doing that. And the interesting part is we don't know what he's doing because he hasn't been doing that many appearances and that many things. So it is puzzling, and I think yesterday they called him an empty chair. I think that's going to stick.
In Florida, they called him an empty chair?
Yes. A lot of the shows in the morning, whether they were in Spanish or in English, they were talking about the empty chair.
Well, it would seem to me that the Bush campaign would jump all over that. It's going to be interesting to see if this strategy works. Let's turn now to immigration reform. Now we've got a new Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan, former chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, voted in last week as Speaker of the House. He says he's not going to bring forth immigration reform because the president is untrustworthy on this issue. Here's what he had to say.
The National Review reported this week that you made a promise to the House Freedom Caucus that you will not bring immigration reform legislation to the House floor while President Obama is in office.
Yeah, I think he's proven untrustworthy on this issue. He tried to go around Congress with an executive order to rewrite laws unilaterally. Presidents don't write laws. Congress writes laws. So yes, I do not believe we should and we won't bring immigration legislation with a president we cannot trust on this issue. If we believe and have consensus on things like border enforcement and interior security, then that's fine.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the President of the United States, since the last administration, has fourfolded the resources on the southern border and has deported more criminals than any other president. Untrustworthy? Look, I think the Republicans for years have talked a good game about immigration reform, but they're all hat and no cattle. They don't want immigration reform because they're addicted to cheap labor. And if they have immigration reform, eventually that's going to strengthen unions in this country and the Democratic voting bloc, and that's the last thing Republicans want. That's how I see it. Annette Taddeo, what about the fact the president is being called untrustworthy on immigration, and what do you think of this strategy by Paul Ryan?
Oh, please. It's the lamest excuse in the book. It is very clear that this was done as a promise to get the Freedom Caucus votes for him to become Speaker and to calm them down. But it is not the president's fault. The president has always said, bring me a bill. I will sign it. Even when he did the executive orders, he said, if you don't like it, then bring me a bill. Bring a bill to the floor. And I will tell you, it's really, really frustrating as a South Floridian where we desperately need immigration reform, that our Congress people from here, the Hispanic ones, the Republicans, are actually talking, like you said, talking a good game, saying they're for immigration reform, but they know good and well that there is not going to be a vote. They will not allow for them to vote, and we have the votes. When you add up all the Democrats and the few Republicans that will vote for it, it will pass. But they don't want to even bring it for a vote, and that's inexcusable.
Well, Annette, what about the fact that the president has said what you just pointed out, and the Republicans, on the other hand, are telling Paul Ryan, if you do this, we need a promise that you're not going to bring forth immigration reform. I mean, doesn't that underscore that what you're saying about the president is correct, that he does want it, and the Freedom Caucus doesn't want it, and they're making the new speaker say we're not going to bring it up while Obama's around? What about that?
It's just, now all of a sudden it's Obama's fault because of the fact that he used his pen. Well, as a Hispanic, I can tell you Hispanic community is very happy he used his pen, and it is just appalling that they're even going to the courts to stop them from bringing some kind of relief to the Hispanic community that's so desperately needed and to the immigrant community. What we need is a comprehensive immigration reform. We need, these people are sent to Washington not to represent their party or to fight the president from the opposite party, but to come together. And we may not like everything about bills when they come to the floor, but the fact is you got to come together and pass bills. And the proof is in what they just did with the budget, right? I mean, they finally did what was right and, of course, came together, and not everybody's happy. But that's the whole point. We needed a budget. And they're still going on this, rule that they don't want to bring it unless, the hazard rule, that they don't want to bring it unless the entire majority of the Republicans are for something. That's a horrible, horrible rule.
So I think the first deal has already been uncovered. There will be no immigration reform approached or addressed by this speaker because of the Freedom Caucus and where they stand on all of it. Annette Taddeo, great to have you with us. We'll have you back. Appreciate your time here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Ed.
All the best.
My pleasure.
You bet. When we come back, Media Consultant Holland Cooke will sort out the right wing on how they're defending Ben Carson and also the influence of Limbaugh. Where is it in these troubled conservative times? Stay with us. We're right back.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The Ed Schultz Internet broadcast is brought to you by the Ring of Fire radio show. Listen to the Ring of Fire weekends on radio stations across the country. Get more information and the news of the day at ringofireradio.com.
Good to have you with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We move it along on this Monday edition. Holland Cooke, media consultant, great friend of mine, hollandcooke.com, survivalspeech.com. He's got all kinds of stuff going on, travels the country, listens to radio, consults media folks, and he knows what's happening. Holland, good to have you with us.
Now, Ed, I should warn you at the beginning of the interview, if I don't like any of the questions you're asking, I'm going to blame the questioner and then ask to change the interview format. Is that fair?
That's right. You know, I said it's crazy. Here's the thing. Are consumers not smart enough to figure out what a good question is? I want answers. I want to know if Ben Carson had a professional relationship with this company, Manatech, and what was it? And I think it speaks to his character, his integrity, and how he views things. And now he comes out and flat out lies about it. Break down the freak show for us.
Yeah, and we've seen the videos bouncing around since the debate that put the lie to it. If his nose got any longer, it would have crashed through my TV screen. But you know who I really feel sorry for is Rick Santorum. Not that he's my guy, but he was the runner-up last time for the GOP, and he's an interesting guy, and he's not afraid to take a punch. I remember you interviewing him last time in Iowa, and he wasn't scared to talk to you, and you weren't scared to talk to him, and he's been around the block, and he's a smart guy, but they make him go sit at the kids' table. And putting him next to Bobby Jindal, I think, distorts our sense of who's viable and who's not as a candidate. Lindsey Graham is always good for a laugh. If you squint, he still looks like one of those Andy Griffith Show characters. But he's got the best one-liners, and he seems to be running for vice president. And George Pataki, sure, but, too crowded. I just don't know that anybody's paying attention. No. And then when you get to the varsity debate, I'm so struck by how everybody is disappointed by Jeb Bush. Regardless of your political stripe, you're disappointed by this guy. He's got $100 million in the bank. I've been to Iowa 4 times in 6 months, and the ads you see on TV there are PAC money. All of his big fat cat donors came out early, so they're probably maxed out. And it's hard to believe this guy would have a money problem, but he may. And as a speech coach, I've noticed that if you turn down the sound when Jeb Bush comes on TV, it's like watching Ted Kennedy in 1980. He just doesn't look like his heart is in it. Remember when Roger Mudd said, Senator Kennedy, why do you want to be president? You got a couple of minutes of haba, 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 haba. Yeah. He seemed to be running to redeem the family name or something, and I'm told that consultants are begging Jeb Bush to stand up straight and get contact lenses, but he just equivocates so much, and he just doesn't look like his heart is in it. And the one unanimous critique you'll get on these debates is how disappointing he was. The Carson thing has yet to play out because his fibs are becoming apparent. I can't figure this guy out because the things he says are so outrageous, but he's got this delivery that kind of sounds like Truman Capote, and maybe people find that disarming. Here's the guy who says, I'm not politically correct, and now he wants the government to monitor speech on campus, all right?
And he doesn't want the debates on TV either. I mean, he's afraid of the vetting process. Look, I think this whole attack on CNBC is because they're trying to protect a minority candidate. And I think that they don't want their candidates really completely vetted. They've had enough Trump trouble, and they're looking to see if Rubio or Bush or someone else or Huckabee could resurrect themselves to the point where they could mount a serious threat. So if they're going to be stuck with Ben Carson, they better protect him. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, and the bigger debate audience you end up having, the longer the blooper reel is going to get. Look what happened 4 years ago. Rubio had an answer for all the Senate votes he missed, which is a issue very misunderstood out in America. A lot of these votes are procedural, et cetera, et cetera. And people are quick to say, yeah, well, Obama missed as many votes. But that comparison does not help Rubio. The last thing in the world he needs is to be compared to Obama.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And for him to say that the reason why he's missing him is because he's worried about Hillary Clinton being president, I mean, that is what a lame excuse. It just doesn't fly. All right, your observation about Bush is interesting. Where does that leave Bush? I mean, it's almost as if he's running against Rubio, and damn it, at least I'm going to beat the other guy from Florida. That's the way it's coming across.
Yeah, he's trying to play the long ball game, and there's a lot of logic in his narrative about I'm willing to lose the primaries to win the general, because time and again we have seen that what it takes to win the primaries is different than what it takes to win the general. And that and the bloopers, obviously, are what caught up with Romney. You got to be the same guy. And I think that Jeb figures he'll be the last man standing if everybody else bombs out. Mm-hmm. But nobody's getting eliminated yet. Ted Cruz seems to have emerged as the big star last time by pivoting with that incredibly well-phrased attack on the mainstream media. And, look at Huckabee gasping for oxygen. He's kind of turned into a shock jock of the right. He wants to have the sharpest soundbite of the night. So it's very tough being on such a crowded stage. You got to feel bad for Rand Paul. Thoughtful guy, way down on the end, kind of rolling his eyes about this. Yeah. Chris Christie had a great line with fantasy football, but they're all trying to cut through the clutter. And I think Jeb thinks he's going to outlast everybody else, and he'll have enough money in the bank to make it to the general. But you got to make it through the primaries first.
All right, Holland Cooke, media consultant with us, longtime friend of ours here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. You saw him on the Ed Show quite often. All right, Holland, where are the right-wing talkers on this? What's the narrative out there? Who are they rooting for? And who's the go-to reference guy and who is the thought leader on radio now?
Ironically, the thought leader on radio is a guy who's not on radio. It's Bill O'Reilly, who is, I am convinced, much more influential than Rush Limbaugh is now. Mm-hmm. Limbaugh still enjoys the reputation of being the guy you better not cross. Yeah. But if you listen to these guys as much as I do for a living, you notice how nimble they are. They don't want to really commit to anybody yet. They're willing to rule people out. They all seem to be down on Jeb, and they want to call him a rhino, and they want to point to his disappointing performance so far. But they vacillate between Ben Carson and Donald Trump. They kind of like Carly Fiorina. They like the bomb throwers. They like the Tea Party narrative. But look at the most reasonable guy on that stage last debate. Might have been Governor Kasich. Here's a guy who understands public policy. He's been in the trenches. He wasn't afraid to take the Medicare dough for Ohio. Yeah. But they need him like a hole in the head because they're trying to jump in front of whoever parade it ends up being. They're loving Trump because he's such great copy. Carly Fiorina is the pit bull attack dog who's supposed to go after Hillary. And what you may have seen in the last couple days, and much of America doesn't know because this is a little inside, Carly Fiorina has just signed on with a major Washington, D.C. speaking bureau. The name of the company is called Leading Authorities, and if you go to their website, you can scroll down this who's who of rubber chicken acts that they represent for big money. And when is the last time we've seen somebody who claims to be in the thick of a presidential run who's taken paid gigs to pay the bills?
Well, she knows she's not going to get the nomination. She might as well capitalize on her visibility while she has the opportunity. That's how I read that.
Exactly. This is her moment. If she made the ticket as Veep candidate, that'd be pretty cool. If the Republicans get in, maybe she'd be Commerce Secretary. But, now that you got Link Chafee out of the way, I don't think there's anything stopping that Hillary juggernaut.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Bernie Sanders has more contributors. Bernie Sanders has the crowds. Bernie Sanders now has the money. And if he wins Iowa and if he wins New Hampshire, you just never know where this is going to go. So I think there's a pretty legitimate race on the Democratic side. I wouldn't sell out Bernie Sanders yet. I mean, I think that we're a long way from this being decided. The other thing about John Kasich, I was in Ohio last month. The Democrats in Ohio think that Kasich will be on the ticket, that whoever gets the nomination, that Kasich can do a better job in Cuyahoga County than anybody else. And if you get that or get close to it, you can win the state of Ohio. And we all know how bad the Republicans have got to have that to get the White House. So that's the convention.
Never won the White House without it. And the cutest couple on paper would have been Jeb and Kasich, president and Veep, because it's Florida plus Ohio.
No doubt.
But Jeb's going nowhere fast. And I think you're right about Bernie Sanders. A field of burn. His crowds are bigger than Trump's.
Yeah.
Trump is still getting more coverage because he's just such great copy.
Well, Bernie Sanders is getting the least amount of coverage of any of these candidates.
Yeah, and if you're Hillary Clinton, your firewall is South Carolina, because Ohioans like to be asked for their vote. What if Bernie wins in Iowa and then rolls into a neighboring New Hampshire, next door to where he's from in Vermont? If you're Hillary Clinton, your firewall is going to be South Carolina.
All right. Holland Cooke, media consultant, great to have you with us. Survivalspeech.com is where we go, correct?
You bet, pal. Good to talk to you.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much. Holland Cooke with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. We're back tomorrow.